Hello, everybody. This is John DiMartino, Director of Productivity with the Waxman Group Productivity Coaching Program. In this video, we're going to be discussing the contract to lease. This is the form that you're going to send out to a listing agent who has a lease that your tenant wants to place an offer on. Now, once this is important, note, this is not a lease. A lease is going to be signed before they actually take occupancy of the property, but this is going to be a basic terms that's being proposed to the owner, the landlord, so that the landlord can put together the formal lease that's going to spell out everything of what the entire tenancy will actually look like. So as of the time of this recording, which is September 2023, this is the CL9. This is the CL9 that was approved by the Florida Association of Realtors, most recently revised in September of 2022. It's always important to make sure that you're using the most accurate and most recently updated contract when you're writing any offers. So let's go through this contract and discuss all what you would actually put into all the fields of this contract. Now, obviously, this is a blank contract, and as always, I have a pre-filled out one that has some examples that we can use. Okay, so in this case, we're going to go Sam and Sally, the seller, which now they're going to be tenants. They're the owners of the property. We're going to put their name in for the prospective landlords, all right? And they're going to be renting to, hopefully, if this gets accepted, they'll be renting to Tammy, the tenant, all right? Now, it's important to make sure that you're putting the right names of the parties on the contract. So the best practice is to go to the county property appraiser website, find the name of the legal owners of the property, and put them as the prospective landlord that's on there. Okay. If it's an LLC, if it's a corporation, if it's 2 different people, if it's 10 different people, that's fine. We're going to put their names on this contract as the prospective landlord. Now, the prospective tenants is going to be who is going to be named on the lease. This is not necessarily saying minor children. This is usually going to be the husband and the wife. It's going to be the tenant. It's going to be the tenant and the roommate. Whatever the living situation or the family situation is, we're going to put those tenants' names on here. Okay. Now, what we're going to do is when we fill this out, we're going to fill out this entire form. We're going to attach the offer, which is this form. We're going to attach the offer and any other supporting documents. So that might mean a rental application for every adult over 18 years old. We're going to attach a separate rental application there. We're going to also attach a credit score, a credit report. We're going to attach a background check or even a rental or eviction check. We're going to attach a copy of photo IDs. We're going to attach a picture of their dog. We're giving them 2 to 3 months of income statements to show that they do have proof of funds in order to afford the month each rent. And we're putting everything together in one form or one package and sending this out to the landlord's agent, the listing agent, so that the agent and the owner have all the information that they're going to need in order to make a decision, a determination of, do I want to rent to Tammy tenant or not? Okay. So that's all the other forms that's going to be attached to it. This is just the contract to lease. And this is what we're filling out here. Okay. So we're saying that the landlord and the tenant agree to execute a formal lease no later than. This isn't a time for acceptance. This is saying, I'm sending you over this offer and I want someone to put together a formal lease. And I usually give them a week for this. You have a week to put together a formal lease and send that back. Now we can decide if the landlord is going to be the one that's drafting the lease or if the tenant is going to be the one drafting the lease. The tenant, 9 times out of 10, the landlord is going to be the one that's going to be representing, going to be writing. 99 times out of 100, the landlord is going to be preparing the formal lease and paying for preparing that lease. Okay, so now let's talk about paragraph 2. This is going to be the good faith deposit. With the intention of entering into a lease with the landlord, the tenant has paid a deposit. And for this example, we're saying $2,500, which is equal to 1 month of the the monthly rent. So the tenant has paid $2,500 to the deposit holder. In this example, I said Keller Williams Realty Consultants, okay, or whoever is going to be holding your deposit. This is not escrow. This is a deposit. They're very similar, and they're two completely different things. All right. But this is who's going to be holding that deposit. In this case, Keller Williams Realty Consultants is going to be holding $2,500 toward that in good faith that the tenant will perform during this and all the terms of the contract. Now, one of the things that it says in here is that with the intention of entering the lease, that the tenant has already paid $2,500. Okay. Well, I want to skip forward to additional terms. I put in additional terms in paragraph 12 that says that the paragraph 2 deposit will be made within 2 days of contract acceptance. So even though the contract says that $2,500 was already made, by writing in this additional clause in here, I'm saying that paragraph 2 deposit will be made 2 days after the landlord accepts this contract. That way, the tenant's $2,500 isn't always being held up or already being made in advance, but held up in a deposit holder in the deposit holder's escrow account. Okay, so $2,500, 1 month of rent is going to be held as a good faith deposit. Who's going to be holding it? Who's going to be holding it? And then what property is this going to go towards? So in this example, we're going to put the property address, 123 Main Street. We're going to put the full address here. If we're also going to put on here if it's unfurnished or if it's furnished. And if it is going to be fully furnished, we do want an inventory. Now, granted, if you don't have the inventory of the items that's going to be furnished, I promise you that the owner does have one, and will probably attach that as part of the lease as well. Okay. If you have to put anything extra, remember we do have this additional paragraph 12 down here, which is going to specify any additional terms that's going to be added to the formal lease. Okay. The property will be used for only residential purposes and occupied by only the tenants named over up here in paragraph 1 and the following persons. This is where you're going to be putting a non-responsive occupant, a non-leasee responsible occupant, or minor children will also be named on here as well. So if it's minor children, I usually will just write their names and their age in here as well, so that they know that this is a family, or this is a roommate situation, or this is a parent is going to be staying with them as well, but not as the minor children or the elderly parent that's going to be staying with them is not a named member of the named tenant and responsible for the actual lease itself. In this case, only Tammy tenant is the one that's fully responsible for all the terms of the lease. Okay, so this is paragraph 4 is going to be the lease term. So when does the lease begin? When does the lease end? Most of the time we're looking at annual lease agreements, in which case we're going to say that the lease will begin on October 1st and will end on September 30th of the following year. Whatever that 365th day is, we're going to go ahead and put that date on here. Make sure, because I know this is usually a typo that a lot of people mess up. They forget to change the date on the year. So just make sure you put in the right dates there. So paragraph 5 is how much money is due before occupancy. So tenant will pay the sum of, in this case, we're saying $7,500. Based on the numbers that we're putting down here, and we'll go over this in a moment. But prior to closing, prior to occupying the property, prior to October 1st in this case, that the tenant is going to be giving $7,500. Usually this is going to be first month, last month, and security deposit. If your landlord is requiring that it's first month and 2 security deposits, well, we're going to write that here as well. If there's a pet deposit, refundable or non-refundable, we're going to be putting that in here as well. So the first month's rent is going to be $2,500, and that's due at the time of move-in. If we're paying any further advanced rents, maybe it's the month of October, November, and December, we're paying a few months in advance, we're going to write that down here and how much add those rental amounts in, and we're going to say that's due at time of move-in. The last month's rent is also $2,500 at time of move-in, and security deposit, $2,500 at time of move-in. Again, like I said, if there's a pet deposit, if it's refundable or non-refundable, we're going to denote that on here as well. Now, the paragraph 2 deposit, the $2,500 that we have paid or will pay within 2 days of contract acceptance, that paragraph 2 deposit will be credited to the first month's rent at the time of closing. When they make that deposit originally, that's a good faith deposit. That's not a security deposit. That is not the first month's rent or anything. That's a good faith deposit. At the time of closing, that good faith deposit will be applied to the first month's rent. So that's what that is. So they pay $2,500 in the very beginning. We're holding that. At the time of closing, they need to come up with another $5,000 more, which is last month and security. So they're going to come to to get the keys from the landlord the day of move-in with the cashier's check or money order for $5,000, and we have that $2,500 that is also going to be applied towards that first month's rent. Now, how do we get paid? Typically, the listing agent has in their listing agreement that the commissions due will come from the money that's in that first month's rent. That's typical of what happens. Okay, right before closing, be a good steward of real estate and reach out and communicate with the other agent, the landlord's agent, and ask, we're holding $2,500. Will this be applied towards our commission? Because if it is applied towards our commission, at the time of move-in, we're going to deduct our commission from that initial deposit and bring the remainder to either the listing agent or to the seller, depending on what their instructions are. So the deposit, $2,500, is going to be applied towards the first month's rent. Okay, the rent payments. This is paragraph 6. The rent payments, the total amount of the lease term. So $2,500 times 12 months is going to be $30,000. So the total rent for the term, the 1 year, is going to be $30,000. That's what we're putting here. If taxes are due, and in certain situations they will be, if taxes are due, we're going to put that number down here as well. Okay, so are they paying that $30,000 in full on a certain date, or are they paying monthly for $2,500? In this example, we're saying that they're going to be paying monthly on the first day of every month in the amount of $2,500. If pets are prohibited or permitted, let's go ahead and write that here. If they're permitted, let's put the type of pets as if it applies, if it's applicable. So I might put a 45-pound boxer. I might put a 5-pound chihuahua. I might put whatever pets that I have here. If they say that it's prohibited, no pets, we're going to check off prohibited. Same thing with smoking, whether it's prohibited or permitted. You're putting that in the very beginning. In paragraph 9, we're saying what utilities is included in the rent. And if it's included in the rent, that the landlord is going to pay it at the landlord's expense. Okay. If there's no utilities that's included in rent, then the tenant will pay for all those utilities. Okay. So in this example, tenant will pay for all utilities and connections and charges and everything except for water, sewer, and cable, as an example, if that's applicable. The landlord agrees to pay the water, sewer, and cable. That might even be part of the association fee. Whatever that particular example is, that's what we would write in here. For paragraph 10, this is going to be maintenance. The landlord is responsible for maintenance and repair, and you put the term in here. So when I'm representing a tenant, I'm going to put in here that the tenant is responsible to maintain and repair items less than $100. All right. So I want to limit the amount that my client or my tenant is going to have to pay. So I'm going to say repair items less than $100. Now, if I'm representing the landlord, I don't want the tenant to have to call my landlord every time a light bulb goes out and this and that. So I'm might even put that number a little bit higher. I might say repair items less than $250. Okay. That's really going to be a decision for you and the landlord and whatever is negotiated. But as a general rule of thumb, when I'm representing the tenant, I usually put in here repair items less than $100 will be paid by the tenant. Anything more is going to be paid by the landlord. So let's use an example of a light bulb goes out, or they lock themselves out of the house. If they lock themselves out of the house, or the light bulb goes out and it's going to cost less than $100, well, then it's up to the tenant to pay for that. However, if the air conditioning goes out, if the air conditioner is no longer working, or if the electrical panel needs to be fully replaced, all right, that is going to be a repair cost or replacement cost that is going to be handled by the landlord. Now, most of the leases that you're going to read that have this verbiage in it is also going to say, unless there is negligence. So if there is negligence that was caused on behalf of the tenant, that the tenant will be required to pay to have that repaired or replaced if there's negligence. Okay, let's talk about association approval. If association approval is required, we're going to say that association approval must be received, that has to be received prior to move-in, and that the tenant will pay the application. Okay, it's important to make sure that we're putting this in here and that the tenant is applying for the association within a reasonable time frame. That is a condition of moving in. If there is an association approval, make sure that we're giving enough time in our contracts that will allow for association approval. Okay, we talked about paragraph 12, if there's the additional deposit, and if there's any other terms that's going to be going on the contract, we're going to write that here in paragraph 12. Paragraph 13 is going to state that when we submit over our application and our background checks, if for some reason the landlord says that they don't feel that the credit or background check is acceptable, then this form may be terminated and any deposits that were made will be released back and refunded back to the tenant. Paragraph 14 says if it's a service member, there is a Florida statute that says if this is a service member, someone who is in the military, a landlord must provide written approval or denial within 7 days. If they're going to be denied, we need that within 7 days, along with a reason for denial of that service member. So anytime I'm preparing a contract to lease, I do ask them, are you a service member? Yes or no? And we're going to mark that in here. And if yes, the landlord has 7 days to make a decision of what they want to do. Okay, failure to perform, and what happens if the landlord or the tenant do not perform any of the obligations that's in here. If the tenant fails to perform any of the promises or obligations under the contract, the deposit of the tenant may be forfeited and retained by the landlord as liquidated damages. If the landlord fails to perform any of the obligations under the agreement, the tenant may elect to receive their deposit back refunded, okay, and may actually go after the landlord for any kind of damages. That is built into the contract of what happens if either party fails to perform. Okay, paragraph 16, we're going to put the names and the brokerage name of the agents that's involved, the tenant's agent and the landlord's agent. Okay, so we have Annie agent and Aaron agent, both from Keller Williams Realty Coral Springs, is going to be in here. Okay, and then the signature page, it's important to note that this contract is not a lease. I've heard people say that this is not a contract, and it 100% is a contract, and it is a binding contract. However, it's not a formal lease. Once they have a formal lease, that's going to be a 14, 15, 20 page formal lease that's going to spell out everything that the relationship of actually going to look like. And if there's anything that conflicts with the provisions of this contract that we're putting together, the lease will prevail. Okay. Again, this is intended to be a legally binding contract, and if they don't understand, they should seek the counsel of an attorney. So now, next thing we're going to do is the tenant is going to sign. They're going to put their contact information, name, telephone number, and email address here, and then they're going to send everything over to the landlord's listing agent for them to consider. If it's accepted, the landlord will sign, they'll date, they'll put their contact information, make sure everyone initials down here at the bottom on every page, and then we'll be under contract. They'll put together the lease. Once they put together the lease, right away we need to make sure that we're making any deposits that we said we were going to make. We're applying for the association and cooperating to get the association approval done within a timely manner. Okay, so that is the contract to lease. This is what you would fill out when you're making an offer on a rental unit. If you have any questions, you can always reach out to myself. You can reach out to any of your coaches, reach out to your broker, or anyone else that would be able to assist you on completing and filling out this contract. And for this offer or any other offer, you're more than welcome to send it over to myself or to any of the coaches to review the contract to see if there's anything that should be added, deleted, removed, or changed, or included in the contract. So thank you very much, everyone. Let me know if you have any questions. Make it a great day, everyone.